Welcome back to Telltale Poetry Submission Interview Series. Today, I am excited to chat with Becky Tuch, writer, instructor, editor, and the powerhouse behind the Lit Mag News Roundup. She also founded the original website for the Review, which is how Becky and I first got to know each other via email and online. And that site is now hosted and run by Gonzaga University. So welcome, Becky.
Hi, thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, it's a great pleasure to actually meet you virtually and talk to you face to face.
Of course.
Been great support to me and so many other writers over the years. And it's just always been such a pleasure to connect with you in the little ways that we have over social media and email. So I wanted to ask you, really, what was the original inspiration for creating the Lit Mag News Roundup and how you got that all started?
Sure. So I started the Review in 2008, which was it was a Lit Mag review site. We reviewed literary magazines, we interviewed journal editors, we posted publishing tips, and there was a database of thousands of literary magazines. And the purpose of the site really was just to kind of demystify the world of literary magazines for writers, because people get overwhelmed. There's so many literary magazines out there. I think people really just don't even know where to begin. So I started that site, and then somewhere along the way, I think it was in 2010, I started a newsletter associated with that site. And then when I sold the Review, I took a break, I stepped back, I was working on my own stuff. And then last year, around November, I realized that I actually really missed writing the newsletter. There was something in me, I just wanted to do it again. I wanted to connect with writers again. And I put out the question on Twitter, do you guys want this? Should I start the newsletter again? And the response was really positive. A lot of people were, they had been following it all these years and they missed it. So that was exciting to me. So I started it again last year, and it's been a lot of fun. And I think it's been nice because it doesn't have the same pressure that the Review had. The Review is like a full service website. And so I was doing a lot of back end work and tech work and stuff that I sort of got tired of toward the end. But this is just purely writing the newsletter, connecting with writers, having fun, telling them what's going on in the literary magazine world. And that's it. And it's just been a lot of fun.
That's awesome. That's great. I think I was definitely one of the people that responded to the
to
the tweet. I was like,
well,
yes. Can you, you talked a little bit about back-end work and some of the other things, and but really, like, what's your process for generating the newsletter? Like, do you have, set things you do, and is it morphing and changing on you?
So the first thing I do is look for gossip, which it sounds kind of trivial, but it's true. Like I want the newsletter to be fun and to tell people what's going on. So I just, I spend a few hours sort of like combing through Twitter and looking for not just purely trivial gossip, but things that writers would want to know about something happening in the Lit Mag scene, some editor, stepping down, or an editor getting promoted, whatever. So I just spent a few hours looking for that. There's usually not actually that much juicy stuff. So it ends up being very, information-based about things that are changing in the Lit Mag world. And then I look through calls for submissions and try to share as much of those as possible.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it when you always include me. That's fun. I always get excited. I open it. I'm like, oh, yay, I'm right there. So, no, I appreciate that. And that's one thing that I really love about it too. That is fun is that I never miss your subject lines, right? When they come through in my email, I love how catchy they are. Like usually you're using like song titles, like Don't You Love It? Let's see, Don't You Love Lit Mags Madly? That one's hard to say out loud. And then Hello Lit Mags, My Old Friend. That's one of my favorites. So I always love that. I mean, I think you did that before with the review too, right? Like sort of, made these catchy subject lines for your newsletter. I'm just curious how you got started on that, because it is super fun and it's so creative. And I honestly look forward to that probably the most. I'm like, what's she going to do this time?
That's great. Thank you for saying that. So one thing that was funny was I got an email once from this guy who was so angry by those subject lines. And he actually told me they put him in a murderous rage. Like he got so angry because I was using this. So I was like, well, I have to keep doing it. This guy is getting like really
yes, you do. That's amazing.
I know. I was really surprised. And I asked around and people said, no, keep doing it. It's fun. It's great. It's fine. And I think for me, something that was really important was introducing this element of playfulness into the process, because people get really bogged down with the publishing process and trying to compete in the literary world and trying to find their place. Understandably, it is incredibly stressful and demanding, and we have so many doubts and we have so many anxieties about our work, and then trying to get past the gatekeepers. And, people can take that kind of thing very seriously, and it can weigh on you. So I see the newsletter as an important service, providing information so people have a greater sense of transparency and access to lit mags, but also sort of introducing the spirit of playfulness and fun, and to try not to feel to not be too hard on yourself in the submitting process, and sort of like with the business aspect of writing, because it can bum you out, So if the newsletter is like a source of cheer for people and inspiration and hope and playfulness, then that's a good thing for me.
Yeah, I think that comes through so well, really. When I really enjoy reading them, because it is, fun. And I mean, you really pull that clear through all of the content. There's always sort of a fun, perspective. And I really appreciate that. I think it's also, it really does make it more accessible, right?
Yeah.
It's, it's not so highbrow, which we all need less of in general. So
yes.
What has surprised you the most this time around doing the newsletter?
That's a great question. I think a few things. One is how much I'm enjoying it, because I felt like, I'm going to do this until I stop enjoying it. And I haven't had that feeling with the review I love doing the review, but toward the end, it was just like another thing to do. It was another thing weighing on me. And with this, I haven't had that feeling of kind of like, oh God, like dragging my feet to the work. It's just been really fun. I think because I control the timing, there's a lot more flexibility with it. Right. So that's been a really pleasant surprise that, wow, a year has gone by already.
I was surprised too. Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh, it has been a year. Wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that's where I'm coming from with my website too. In the first few years, I was posting something like every single day, but I was also doing a lot more of my own research and learning during that time. So those posts, I mean, the reason why I was sharing them was because it was information I needed to seek out.
Right.
And,
exactly.
And then over time, I started to be more flexible with it and sort of just look for the things that really did bring me joy or that I really wanted to do. And I've just kind of really focused on those. And that's how I think I've kept it going too. If I had tried to continue what I had started the first couple of years, I would have burned out.
Right.
So I'm super impressed that you kept the review going for as long as you did.
Thank you. I think also,
it was a lot of work.
What you're doing also is you're building a community. And once you start to do that, it gets easier because you feel like you're connecting with specific people. And that's been something that surprised me too, is just the feedback that I've gotten from people, which is, it's just so nice. People are so nice. And that's been a really pleasant surprise, is the support and the engagement and people. So I also interview editors as part of the newsletter, and people show up, they attend the interviews, they ask questions, they're enthusiastic. And that's just, you never know when you start an endeavor if people are going to be into it, if there's going to be that kind of response, and there has been. So
yeah, no, that's excellent. And it does get easier too, because the more people like I used to have to go digging around and try to find, which ones, or who will fill out my interview, and that sort of thing. And of course, I found efficiencies, ways to sort of streamline my process and reuse, different materials and things like that. But it's great now because I literally don't have to look anymore. People just are like, hey, how do we get on there? And I was like, oh, yeah, you'll work out. Here's my interview form.
Right.
Really,
right.
It's a lot simpler. So it doesn't take the amount of time that it did originally. So no, that's awesome. Let's see what else. Oh, so, speaking about, connecting in the literary community, what do you think you'd like to see more of? What do you think we're missing?
Sure. This is a tricky question because I always think about this when I'm using like the hashtag literary community on Twitter. It's a funny thing because the literary community is certainly not monolithic, right? Like there's the crime writing people, which probably don't have much overlap with the literary magazine people. So I don't know. I don't want to speak for the entirety of the literary community because I think it's so vast, right? But one thing that excites me is when I see calls for submissions or opportunities for people sort of outside the kind of MFA complex, if you will. Like I think, we're very invested in diversity now, which I think is great. And I also like to see diversity of backgrounds and experiences. So when there are lit mags that, have a call for submissions for nurses or a call for submissions for I don't know, garbage truck, drivers or anything that's sort of like outside, or parents or people who are like, have sort of been working outside the academic track. That excites me because I think it's bringing in voices that are going to be different and going to have different perspectives. So I think there is more of that happening increasingly. And I just think that's a great thing.
No, I love that. That's a great response. That it kind of inspires me to watch for those, a little bit more closely. I've certainly picked up, several calls that are pretty focused that way. And I really do like the ones that have themes that inspire people to also write something new. I like that aspect as well. And then it's always great when you can cross, a writing hobby or talent with something that's part of your day to day. I think is brilliant. And I've never really been able to effectively do that with my software day job. One of these days I'm going to figure out how to do that. how to write a poem about working in, for a major corporation. I don't know. I'll have to come up with something eventually. So far, I haven't been able to do that.
Yeah. Well, it would be, it's an interesting perspective, and I think that's work is so much a part of people's lives. And there's so many people who, maybe you got your MFA 15 years ago or 10 years ago, and you just feel like you're sort of out of the loop and you're not up to date with, you don't necessarily feel that connected with what's going on. So I think the more opportunities for people who are sort of outside that kind of ethos is great.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's great. That's an awesome response to that. What do you think has helped you most as a writer? If you could think of like one thing. I know, just one. That's all. No, I'm just kidding.
I think. Oh, sorry.
No worries.
Speaking of being helped as a writer, having a 6-year-old has not been the most productive. But I don't know. So many different things help. So many different. That come from within, being inspired by some personal thing that you just can't let go. And, it can feel like it's haunting you, but that is actually your fuel as a writer. So that, just something inside of you, it can help at times. Other times you need that support from the community. You need readers, you need classes, you need workshops. Sometimes you need to just go on Twitter for 2 minutes and feel like you're not working in a vacuum completely by yourself. Sometimes it's just reading books and getting inspired from other writers. So it's different things at different times. And I don't know if there's any one specific thing that has helped me. It just kind of trying everything. And I always think of this, there's this great interview with Leonard Cohen, the songwriter. It's kind of bleak, but somebody asked him, what helps you when you're struggling? And he said, nothing helps. So, sorry, it's probably not what you want to hear. But he said, he's tried booze and religion and friends, and, he's tried everything and nothing helps, which is also the inverse of that, is that everything helps. You're just,
right.
When you're trying to make it work, you just try whatever you possibly can to make it work.
No, what I really like about what you just said is that there does seem to be seasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
To how we write and how we interact.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be productive all the time. I mean, there
Right.
are those people who can just, they write a poem a day, or they do,
Mm-hmm.
They really are prolific and they can just put out a ton of content. And then there are those of us where, sometimes we just need to be on social media and forget that we're trying to write something, and it's perfectly okay. And it's different for everybody. And
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right that there are so many different things that we can do, so many tools at our disposal,
Mm-hmm.
and also it's okay to take breaks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I don't write a poem for a few months, and I just give myself permission to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think knowing yourself as a writer is key. Like for me, some days I have to set a word count to get the work done. And then some days it's just not happening, and sort of saying, that's okay, because that next week you're going to do the work. So sort of understanding your own process and trusting that is key.
That's great. That's a great way to wrap up that conversation. So speaking of which, what are you currently working on, or what's next for you in your writing?
Sure. So I'm working on stories, and then I'm working on a longer project, which that's all I'll say about it right now.
More to come. Okay.
It's a longer project. We'll see what happens. It's very much in its early vulnerable phase. So we'll see.
Sure.
But short stories and this longer project, and then the newsletter as well.
Awesome. Well, that sounds exciting. I'm kind of looking forward now to seeing where you land with that, as it starts to evolve. So, this has been just such a pleasure. How can viewers sign up for the Lit Mag News Roundup?
Sure. So it's a Substack. So you go to litmagnews.substack.com.
Perfect.
And then also I'm on Twitter, so you can find me at Becky L Tuch, Tuch on Twitter. And then if you find me there, you can also find the Substack through there.
Yep. Perfect. All right. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you, Trish. This was great.
Yep. My pleasure.
Bye.